We have a very, very selective memory, and we also imagine ourselves in history as if we were the good guys. One of the things that I remember saying to a group of students once was, if you'd lived in France during the Second World War, in occupied France, what do you think you'd have done? And they all said, join the resistance. And you said, no, you wouldn't. You know, one of you might have, but you'd have been collaborators. The ancient world gets different every year. And we also have to remember that only part of the soul of Europe is in the classical world. You know, happily, the classical world is really important, but then there are all kinds of other influences, you know. So, yeah, Islamic Spain, you know, we mustn't forget this. We tend to think that Europe is the descendant of Greece and Rome. Well, in part it is, but in part, thank heavens, it's not. Past is always changing, that we can have a conversation with the past, we can make the past different, and we don't learn from the past in any direct way. In studying the past, we do learn more about ourselves. I mean, for a long time, I think people recognised that there were slaves in the ancient world. Of course, you know, you couldn't read any ancient literature without seeing that. But they sort of minimised it. You know, they said things like, oh, this is like a sort of household servant, you know, one of the family, and this kind of thing. It really wasn't until people like Moses Finley in the 1960s and early 70s where people actually looked at the ancient world and said, look, that is an exploitative slave system, and it's an economic system which is based on non-free labour. Now, I think if you go back into history, there are very few periods where there haven't been slaves, non-free people of some sort. You know, in the modern world, you know, there is modern slavery. We like to turn a blind eye to it, but there's modern slavery. Why the classical world is different is that it was an absolute, it was the linchpin, the building block of the ancient economy, and that these slaves were not just unfree, they were commodities. They were bought and sold, just like now we would buy and sell a motor car. It's very hard now to see not just exploitative, but almost sadistic the ancient system of slavery was. And people often look at ancient Rome and they say, ancient Rome was quite interesting because they had all these slaves, that's what the economy was based on. But quite a lot of them ended up being freed. I think they freed slaves not because they were being nice. They freed slaves because they fulfilled their usefulness. There is that absolute commodification of the human being. Now, that's not to say that there weren't also all kinds of human relationships between master and slave. Men quite often married, they freed the woman slave and they married her. So nobody can quite sustain that sort of sadistic commodification in quite that extreme way, but it is underneath there. The two places in the history of the world where there's been mass slavery of that sort is the Americas in the modern period and ancient Greece and Rome. If I can do a little bit to show that women can sometimes fight back against the rubbish that people direct at them, then that's good enough for me.